All right, I figured out what the error was. That's very simple. We'll finish in a second. But starting on page 398 in the book for about 10 pages, that's where they explain this I comparable. So again, if you weren't here for class to hear the lecture, or you didn't understand it, or you think I didn't go over it well enough, etc., that's where it is in the book. And they give several examples. In fact, most of the ones they give are a lot harder than what we have to do. All right. So here was the error. Let me close this first. I don't want that beeping, that's why. All right. You have to go up to the top where you've got the name of your class, and you need to put afterwards : I comparable. What that means is I want to be able to use the I comparable interface. I neglected to put that in there. Apologize. I think once you put it in, it'll be fine. So the only thing that we have to do yet is to write the driver for this. All right. Some of this will look very similar to what we've done before. Some of it, of course, will look different. All right. So if you've got that and it's not showing any errors in here, click your double disk icon to do a save all, and let's go back to the driver. Now, it already tells us what we have to do. We have to create a relatives list program. We got to create an array of 5 or more relative objects. We'll keep it at 5. And the class has already got all that stuff in there. So that's done. So basically, we've got to create the array, input the stuff, and output it back out. Sound familiar? It's pretty much what we just did in the last program that we finished, the taxpayer one. All right? So, coming down to here, and before we get into main, I'm again going to declare and initialize my one program constant. I called it num relatives. You can call it whatever. So again, this will that's going to be our loop control variable. And I just have another one here that I just called temp. You'll understand, I believe, what that means in just a couple minutes. If you'd all stop for a second and look on the screen, because it just, when I think of stuff, I like to just share it with you. Before I told you about doing this, remember I said we could say here relatives array dot length. All right, I showed you that before. And then I said, you know what? We could also say int len equals relatives array dot length. Correct? Okay. Why don't we make it even easier than that? Don't we already have a constant that we created that's of size 5? We could do that. That's probably cleaner than the way I showed you before. How that got there. But. And this was wrong. This does not instantiate. This declares. That declares an array of 5 objects. Now we're going to actually instantiate them. Okay. Now I'm going to do this a little bit differently. And what I mean is I'm going to save this and I'm going to run it now because I want you to see what's happening. This should tell me enter relative. Oh, of course, I would need a read line in there. That would probably help. So enter relative number 1 first name. Enter relative number 2 first name. Enter relative number 3 first name. Number 4 and number 5. All make sense? That's what we've done so far. Well, but we were told not only are we supposed to enter their names or input them, but also the relationship and then the birth month, birthday, and birth year. So we've got to do that now. Now, the thing is, that brought it up, but we're not saving it anywhere yet. So we'll want to say in here, relatives array, LCV dot, and again, notice how smart the IntelliSense is. We know it's the name. That's equal to read line, right? And we can do that. I don't need this read line here anymore. We can do that because it's a string. All right. Now for the rest of the ones that are in there, for the relationship, we'll be able to do the same thing. But when we get to the birth month and the birthday and the birth year, we're going to have to do a try parse every time. All right? Okay. I just copied everything. I got to make changes, but I just copied it so it'd be easier so I didn't have to be typing a boatload of stuff here. All right, so Again, I don't know. I don't care how fast the typist or how good a typist you are. These two are so similar, you should be just grabbing those 3 lines, copying them, and making changes. I've got one of my second-year students. He's maybe the slowest typer I've ever had as a student. And he's always holding everybody up. And I keep trying to tell him, hey, copy whenever you can. Now, notice the difference. Okay? Now, one thing I did it like this, and then I made a change. So let me just show you the change that I made. Okay? Well, in fact, we'll do it later. What's going to happen is it's going to say relative, relative. What we really should do is instead of using right here, using relative number, we should really use their name. You know what I'm saying? Because that would make a little bit more sense. For now, let's just leave it the way it is. And then I'll show you my other copy that I did where I changed that. All right? Okay. So I now have those 2 things. I'm going to come down and again, and now I'm going to say birth month. All right, but I can't do it like this now. That won't work. I can't use the read line. All right, so I'm going to do an int dot triparse of read line, and I'm going to put the out. I'm just going to put it in that temp variable that I created. All right. And the good news is I can just grab this now and put it in there 3 times. And this time, come in here and ask for the day. And then do it 1 more time and ask for the year. Okay. We've got about a dozen more lines to type, and then mercifully, we're done. Now, I want to see if that worked, so let me save it and run it again. What is this one? 2, 13, 2018. Okay, and then it'll go to the second person. Again, I put blank lines in here. You don't have to do that. However, it's easier for you to figure out what's going on in here. That is it for the input. That's all of our inputs right there. Now what's nice, please look up on the screen, because this is, for lack of better words, this is the real magic. We told it inside of that iComparable that we were going to sort it based on the name. So all we have to do is say and now it's sorted by name. That's pretty darn nice. So now I want to output the first name, the relationship, and the birth month, birthday, and birth year. So I'll need another for loop. After we get done with this for loop, which is about, I don't know, a half dozen lines or so, we'll put a read line on the end, and we're done. Now, we don't have to do this, but you know what? Look up here. Wouldn't it have been kind of nice to say something like, put a right line in here, that said, I don't know, something like sorted by first name relative array. Something like that. All right. Again, you don't have to do that. Doesn't make the program run any better. All right. But at least they'll have some kind of an idea now what's going on in here. That's all. So I'm going to come in here, write another for loop. And this one, I'm not going to lie, I didn't like the way it printed out, so I looked at the way the author did it, and I used the way she did it, so there is some of that goofy stuff in there. You don't have to do it that way. There's so many different ways this could be done. But mine just looked like it threw up. And that should be everything. Let's, again, I'll come right back to it, but let's run it, make sure it looks right. Well, all that, I forgot my read line. You know what? I'm going to pretty this up a little bit, though, because all these \n's, I'm going to get rid of them except for the first one. It's going to look a lot nicer, I think, now when we input this. Yeah, that's better. And you can see it has now been sorted. And it was sorted in there by what? By first name. If I didn't want to do that, I could sort it by relationship. I could sort it by birth month, birth year, or whatever. All right? And that's actually what you're asked to do in the second part of this. All right? Now, my hope is, because like I said, to me, this stuff is just so different that going over this helped, and it helped you to understand it. I'm not going to say, hey, do all of you understand this 100%? I don't. So if you did, I'd be surprised. All right? But the idea is now with this particular problem, looking back at the book here, we just did Part A. So you're responsible for doing Part B. It says create a relative's birthday program. So I would copy your relatives list and work with a copy that modifies the relative list program so that after the alphabetical list is displayed, the program prompts the user for a specific relative's name. So, and what I just did, if I said Bob, there is no Bob in there. So it should give a message saying that Bob does not exist. Okay? And if there is, it should return the relationship and the birthday. So if I said Sandy, my wife, it would show me the relationship, so it would say wife, and then it would show her birthday. Does that make sense? So you've got the gist, the most of this done already. Right? So again, that's what we just did. Tomorrow will be lab for the entire period. Unless I have to make some kind of an announcement, I'm not going to say anything. It's lab. About half of you in here are caught up on homework, which means about half of you are behind on homework. Try to get that homework, especially the stuff for 6, 7, and 8, if you haven't finished those yet, in as soon as possible. All right? On this chapter, you do not have to do any debugging exercises. But I do want you to do again. All right? So where it says, the Chapter 9 problems. What have we done? Today we did 5, all of it. We did 6, 6A, and we did 9A. So you are responsible for 6B, 9B, and that thing that we keyed in as a class yesterday. Does all that make sense? You'll turn that in along with these 3 problems. All right? And then what I will do for next week, or for Friday, I guess, all right, we'll do the same kind of thing. We'll go over some problems for Chapter 10. I'm going to take that example that I gave you the other day, that employee example, we're going to blow that thing up. Because Chapter 10 talks about the concept of inheritance. So we won't have just an employee. We'll have an employee class, and then underneath it we'll have hourly employees and piecework employees and commission employees, etc. All right? So that's what we're moving towards. So lab all day tomorrow. Yes? Can I go to the bottom of that? Yes, I can.